Hi, friends. Dick and Sharon back with LA Progressive and one of our favorite colleagues and interview subjects, Peter Lahrmann, a retired longtime pastor, activist extraordinaire who escaped to the East Coast somehow. We let him out of town. How you doing, Peter?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to see you. I didn't escape. I took a stately leave of California after 15 wonderful years with you all.
Well, we miss you, Peter. We really do. I mean, we're fortunate that we have Zoom and we can check in on you from time to time, but it was so much better when we could go and have lunch or, sit in a meeting together, not just a virtual meeting, but a real meeting. So we've
I feel
gathered.
it too.
So we're meeting you here today to talk about a piece that you wrote that you just so kindly gave to the LA Progressive to publish. No kings and no plutocrats either. So let's talk about this piece.
Sure. The prompting was actually my participating in No King's Day and being very impressed by the speakers who represented the immigrant rights community and the labor community. Um, and I thought to myself, okay, so how will this roll into the national conversation about the inability of the Democratic Party to kind of, fight back, find its way? And sure enough, I saw this commentary saying, well, this could be good news because there may be new energy here. And then, and then I stumbled into this Nate Cohn speculative piece about, well, the neoliberals are feeling bad because they seem to have been rejected now by both parties, and can they possibly find a home? And I thought to myself, why are we always having to say we need the permission of the wealthy, people who are heavily invested in the system as it is, in order to be, politically potent or politically legitimate? I think this goes back to why it is that the Democratic Party is kind of voiceless at this time. It has to do with what Robert Reich, whom you guys publish a lot, long ago called the secession of the successful from the broader society, the broader community. Um, I said in the piece, I'm not going to talk about how uh, people who are corporate friendly became the dominant force within the Democratic Party, because I think that's fairly well said. I did take a shot at Schumer and Jeffries and Clinton's for spending No King's Day at a $14.5 million Hamptons estate to honor the wedding of Alex Soros, a billionaire, to whom the mean who worked for Hillary back in the day. I mean, I'm happy for the couple, but they're not this group and others. The Democratic Party, don't want to be associated with this bottom up movement. Particularly, they mistrust it. They mistrust it. I mean, and going back to the disastrous election, the Democrats. I brought up an image that I love from Anand Giridharadas about you're a New Yorker, Sharon, so you know this. Those dudes on Canal Street who are trying to sell watches to gullible passersby. They open their coats and there's all these watches stitched in there. And of course, when the cops come along, they close it up. But the Democrats are like offering their wares. So didn't we give you the infrastructure bill? Don't you understand that it's going to rebuild the auto industry and so forth? Well, actually, people didn't respond, in here to that because it was confusing and it was presented kind of from the top down. And there's this fundamental issue of mistrust among the 60% of people in the United States. Let's not forget this. The 60% of people in the United States who make less than $60,000.
60% of people in the United States make less than
Yeah,
$60,000.
I'll double check that, but we kind of forget that in our more affluent places we think, well, you need $250,000 to live today, don't you? Well, actually, that's why there are people living on less than 75,000, less than 60,000, less than 50,000 in those same places. And they're not very happy because they understand themselves to be kind of in the servant class. So anyway, I'm ranting a little bit, but the punchline in my piece is the Democrats can't have it both ways. They want to have it both ways. They want to be the party of wealth, and they want to be the party of the majority of Americans who work for a living. And it's pretty hard to have it both ways.
Yeah, so you say, I understand that about how Democrats, the high-level Democrats have walled them off from working class people. But I would say here locally in Northeast Los Angeles, the politicians are of the labor movement. They're of the immigrant right movement. They don't have castles on Martha's Vineyard. They're in it to have a career, but they do connect. But I wonder. I mean,
that is true. I'm interrupting, but that is definitely true. California has, in that respect, a somewhat distinctive culture because of the power of the labor movement in California and the fact that it is an immigrant labor movement. That is not necessarily true across the board.
Yeah. So the key is, I mean, this was a wonderful weekend for activists. What, 3 million, 5 million people were out in the streets, 2,000
5 to 6 million. Yep.
Small towns, large towns, and there was a lot of energy. But we've seen that kind of energy in public displays, the Occupy movement, the Women's March here in LA. And that's good, but there's like 5 parts of organizing, and having big demonstrations is one. And I guess part of your piece is, well, how did the Democratic Party or progressives translate all that energy into something that makes some difference in the long run?
Yeah. And really, I think that the sorting out is just now beginning. So in most places, they asked you to register to show up. They wanted you to say, "I'm coming." That's a smart move because that way they have contact with you going forward. And in the case of Rhode Island, I got a follow-up message about, well, it's the last couple of days of our legislative session. There are some very, very key pieces that are unsettled in the legislature because it's, again, this is a blue state. The legislature is all officially Democrat, but there's some really conservative Democrats tied to the development community who don't want, for example, a surcharge that would help us solve our budget issues here and, pay for accessible transportation, healthcare, housing. That was good. It was very good to be reminded, okay, you were there on Saturday. Now, what about Thursday, right? When this stuff is actually going to be decided just, in your neighborhood, basically, at the State House. Whether this works, and whether it creates a different kind of politics, remains to be seen. I think the duopoly of the two national parties, their connection to major wealth, is still a big problem. I think I said in this short article, that a good many of the investors in AI, which is coming to sweep us all away, are nominally Democrats, and the Democrats don't have a different position from the Republican Party in terms of this. Well, they say, yeah, there should be some guardrails, but basically it's just the lure of cashing in. This is America. The lure of cashing in is so powerful, right? It's so powerful. It's like, okay, I'm a legislator today. What am I going to be tomorrow? Could I be a consultant? Could I be a lobbyist?
Right.
So
Do I get a chance?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So in your piece, you talk about how neoliberalism, and you use the word neoliberalism. And at the LA Progressive, I want to remind people that we have a glossary So if ever a term is used and you're not familiar with it, or I mean, you've heard it like banted about quite a bit. I have. And I want to say that neoliberalism is an economic and political ideology that emerged in the late 20th century, and it advocates for free markets, privatization of public services, deregulation, and reduced government spending on social programs. It has nothing to do with liberalism. Neoliberalism is not about civil liberties. It's really about what ultimately becomes unchecked wealth, which is dangerous to democracy. It distorts political power and erodes public trust. So I wonder.
That's phenomenal. That's really good. It is really important to say that. I mean, the confusion always in our culture is in Europe, everybody understands that liberals are free market liberals, right? That's what they're about. And the even the Liberal Party in the UK, which is kind of extinct right now, but started out as, well, we're not Tories, but we're not labor rights either. We're actually, back to John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham and people like that. In all the German-speaking countries, there's a Liberal Party, which is the same thing. Even Canada's Liberal Party, they're economic liberals. They're not necessarily liberals in any other respect.
So it related to what we're talking about, related to the Democrats having a hard time getting traction with these up from the grassroots efforts. We attended an event down in the South Bay put together by Indivisible and Partners. Several hundred people, all the activists representing dozens and dozens of different groups. I'm sure that some of the people there, but we know that a few of the people there run as Democrats for various offices. But it seems to have an enthusiasm that you don't necessarily see in kind of structured Democratic Party gatherings. And I wonder if there's some hope in that.
I think there is. And I think for people like us, at least for people like me, I want to really put the question, the anti-oligarchy rallies, and that's kind of what we're talking about, that AOC and Bernie and others who have been involved in have been phenomenally well attended and excited. And yet, think about this, the National Democratic Party will not give AOC, an actual ranking position. They're honestly scared to death.
Right.
I mean, here's somebody who's entirely reasonable. I wouldn't even consider her to be a radical. She's an entirely reasonable person, but her critique of the system we have is so intense and so good that she's kind of like intolerable to people. That's a problem. So you raise people up from this culture of organizing, right? You raise them up, they get to a certain level, they get recognition, they get decapitated. I'm hopeful that somehow there's going to be a breakthrough here, and I hope there's going to be a breakthrough on the left, not a new party for neoliberals.
Well,
throw their weight around.
So, Peter, I just don't know how there can be a breakthrough as long as we continue to allow unchecked wealth, the broligarchy, and even as we speak, they are accruing probably millions per second. And every second, they get more powerful. So even though we have the people, their power at this point is such that they can just go to the White House and begin to dictate policy. I just don't know if our systems, as they are currently structured, are going to save us. Well,
one of our issues here is media filters, right? So let's call it the the laughing dismissal of the pretensions of the very wealthy that a lot of people feel, like who do they think they are? That does not get filtered through mainstream media, and it does show up in social media, obviously, but the social media don't have the capacity to move mountains the way the mainstream, so-called mainstream media do. So that's one problem. I think there's also some hope. There's this term overreach and collapse. This expression overreach and collapse.
Mhm.
There's some hope that even people within this oligarchy will at some point say, what on earth are we doing? I use the term hellscape in this thing. I mean, the people who are on that, what's it called, Indian Creek Island and outside of Miami, there's been quite a bit of news about this, where Jeff Bezos has a house and Jared Kushner, even they have to have, speedboats, 24 hours, around to guard their little thing. I mean, what kind of life is that? But anyway, they've got their own Iron Dome over the airspace there. What kind of life is that? What kind of life is that? I mean, you have to be a sociopath like Elon Musk to think that colonizing Mars and just escaping to some other zone is a sane idea. That is actually completely, utterly insane, morally and every other way. And I think most people can kind of say, are we going to give these people leadership? Right? I mean, so there's some potential for internal crumbling and internal defections from this ideology of wealth is everything, because it's just contrary to the human spirit for people to think that wealth is everything.
Yeah.
But, back in the days of the aristocracy, right, in the 17th century in England, there were all these groups that came along, the diggers, and all these little radical groups, and they used to have a chant that would say, when Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman? And they would use expressions like, those people have to put on their pants one leg at a time, just like we do. They were openly mocking the pretensions of their overlords. We desperately need more of that in the United States. To say, who the hell are these people anyway?
Yeah,
Making us sign these forced arbitration things, as a condition for getting a job now. I mean, today, if in the regular labor market, in order to get any kind of job at all, you basically have to surrender your legal rights right off the bat.
That's right. As Rick Wolf talks about that all of the time, in Democracy in the Workplace, or Democracy at Work, is his website. And he talks about, most of us live our entire adult lives under the tyranny of a boss.
The other thing that could happen, and I don't, this goes to the overreach theme or the collapse theme. The other thing that could happen is things become so unbearable that people begin to form alternative communities of mutual aid and self-care, within the smoldering ruins of what was once, a democracy. That and in a way, it's like the scenario is we're going to enter a new dark ages. We just got to deal with that, and we're going to have to, let it collapse. I mean, unfortunately, the problem there is, the means of survival underground may be denied us. And it's not like, say, Europe in the 6th century where there were still forests and streams that you could go to and hide out, let the the late Roman Empire just play itself out.
Yeah, this seems like we're in a F. Scott Fitzgerald moment when the wealth is bandied about in such an ugly way. I mean, you talked about a $14 million wedding. Jeff Bezos is going to marry his girlfriend for $20 million and send his girlfriend into space. but there seems to be no shame in it. It seems like that's a goal to aspire to. That's the message that comes across in the media. But I think possibly people, even Trump people, will get tired of that, especially as the nickels get real short. And then they see these people, you know, living these extravagant lives, and with media, it's shoved in your face. You can't miss it.
Yeah, and at a certain point, Dick, I think you're saying this. You can't. We used to say, trying to organize workers at Harvard University and places like that, we used to say you can't eat prestige. Well, you can't eat hatred either, right? I mean, hatred is not hatred, and wearing your MAGA hat is not going to feed your family.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Peter, this piece that you've written is very enlightening. We appreciate you contributing it to the LA Progressive and always sharing your knowledge with us. We encourage people who are listening, who are reading, to please subscribe, please share. At no other time in the history of my life and has this country been in the shape that it's in now. And we really need to educate the populace. So thank you for being here. And thank you, Peter. You want to share any last words?
Yeah. Here are my last words. Subscribe. It's painless. It's valuable. It's a small thing that you can do that has a big result, because we were talking about the media. The LA Progressive is an important media outlet. It's not a fringe thing. Make it more part of your life, and that way it'll be more part of everyone's life.
I'd like to point out, thanks to Sharon's investigations, we now make audio casts of each of the articles. We have a AI that's taking over the world, reads the articles, including this one by you, and I love it. You know, even though I read the articles as we're putting up, then I listen to it, and I get so much more out of it. So,
and you can listen,
readers
right?
wanna,
So you can listen to the LA Progressive articles while you're driving. You don't have to, be reading it. You can actually listen.
That's so cool. I noticed that. And this, again, is a tribute to you, Sharon Kyle, who is a tech person on the human side of tech.
and like a good tech worker, she dumped all the actual work onto me.
Well, because I'm always exploring how to do it better. So,
see you next time.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Love you.
Love you too. Thank you for sticking around. If you like the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below, and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.